Okay, so now we are going to discuss a new topic, and that is joins. But before we discuss this topic about joins, inner joins, full join, and so on, I want to understand. I want you to understand some things. First of all, there is relational databases, which is PostgreSQL is a relational database. Microsoft SQL, MySQL is a relational database. It's a type of database. Then we have non-relational databases. Some examples are MongoDB, Cassandra. You don't have to know this now. But we are learning Postgres, which is a relational databases. And what this means? This means that basically the tables in our database can be linked to one another, and that forms relationships between tables. And this will help us in mimicking live scenarios, and we will see how. And now we have to know what's a relationship in a database. We can have many types of relationships, and we will go them one by one when we will learn this. We can have many to one, one to many, one to one, and many to many. And we will discuss this in later videos, but now I want to discuss a topic, and that is primary keys, because it's the foundation on which the relationship will be built. What is a primary key? Primary key is a special column in our table that indicates the unique records in that specific row. And what I mean by this, we will see. It means that it's a special column that can have a value, and that value needs to be unique across the whole table in that specific column. And it cannot contain null values. We cannot put a null value. Null basically means nothing. It needs to be populated. It needs to have a value. And this special column, which will have a value, it identifies each record in a table. It's like a mapping. And we will see now. But before we see this, let's see it. Let's see it, then we will talk about foreign keys. So for example, here I have this table city. Let me query it. We will see. Select star from city. Okay, and this city has 4 columns: city ID, city, country ID, and last tab date. And if I go here, you can see that I have this PK below city ID, which means primary key. If I go here to constraints, it says here city P key, primary key. This means this column is a primary key column. What does it mean? What does it mean? It means that these values need to be unique in the whole table. I cannot have the same value 1 in the same table. I cannot have 2 rows with the value 1. And what's this role of this primary key? Based on this, we can identify each row, because each row has a unique value. And for example, you don't need to understand this command. We will discuss this when we'll discuss the insert. What I'm trying to achieve here in this command is I'm trying to insert a new row in this table. This table has, I don't know how many, okay, 600 rows. I want to insert a new row, and the value that I want to put in this column is 1. And the value in city is just a city name, and in the country ID 1, and the value of last update, it's just a function that will give me the date for today. And you don't need to understand this, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to insert a row, and the value of this city ID, I want it to be 1. And for example, if I fire it, I will give this error. It says duplicate key value violates unique constraint city primary key. And it says that the city ID 1 already exists. So basically what Postgres is telling me is, hey, you cannot insert a row with the value 1 because it already exists. It needs to be unique. It needs to be unique. And for example, if I put 601, you can see here that I inserted a new row. And for example, if I am going to query it and scroll all the way down, you see here that I have a new row that I inserted with the city ID 601, because this ID didn't exist in our table until now. But for example, if I put null, which basically means nothing, I will get an error. because I cannot insert a null value in a primary key because it has a not null constraint. Constraint means a validation. It needs to be populated. It needs to have a value. And this is why it's important to understand this primary key, because every table needs to have a primary key. Every table needs to have a primary key. The primary key needs to be unique. The value needs to be unique, and we cannot insert not null values. And this primary key is the base on which we will connect tables with each other. And how we will connect tables with each other? Well, I'm going to go to the next topic, which is foreign keys. What is foreign key? Foreign keys is a constraint that we can apply on a column, or on multiple columns, that basically will point to a primary key on other tables. And some rules about foreign keys, and then we'll go to our editor and show. It can be null, so the difference between foreign key and primary key. Foreign key can be null, does not have to be unique, it can be in the same value, multiple rows in our table, and the table can have multiple foreign keys. And what is a foreign key? Let's look in an example. Here we have this city. Let me query this city again. And you see here that we have city ID, city, and this country ID column. Now it doesn't says here that's FK like a foreign key, but it's a foreign key based on the fact that we have here this constraint, foreign key city, and the fact that this country ID is the ID of the table country. So for example, if I query here, select star from country, the table country has a column country ID, which has a primary key. And what this relationship means? Well, it means that this city, this row, for example, this row, with the city ID 1 with the name La Coroa, has this country ID 87. What this tells to Postgres? It means that this row is linked with this table country with a specific row 87 in our country table. So for example, if I query here where country ID is equal 87, here I will get the country Spain. So what tells this to Postgres? It means that this city is linked to this table country, and in our case it's Spain. And instead of inserting here like the same columns, for example the same country, country name, last update, you are just inserting this ID and you are linking these two tables with each other. And basically this city La Coroa is in Spain. And for example, I have here an IntelliJ. IntelliJ is an integrated developed environment. And we have here this city, and you can see here that this city has this country ID and it's linked with this country ID here. How this relationship is defined? This country ID is the primary key of the table country, and this country ID here is the foreign key in the table city that is linking to this country ID. Now I want you to understand something. You don't have to specifically define the same name here and here. You just have to tell Postgres, please link this column with the primary key of this table. And we will see here, we will see how we can actively do this in the next videos. But what I want you to understand is how this relationship works. So you have this city that has this country ID, which is a foreign key here, and is linked to this country ID, which is a primary key here. And based on this, we can join multiple tables, and we will see in the next videos, and not just select information from here. We can select information from here, plus here, plus here, plus here. Every other table we can join it if it's a relationship involved. And hopefully you understand something about primary keys and foreign keys.